Welcome to the City of Charlotte's Open for Business Mentorship podcast, where we feature local entrepreneurs and partner resources to discuss ways to overcome the challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. It's our goal to connect small business owners with the people and resources necessary to thrive as we all move forward beyond these challenges, because moving forward means moving together.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Open for Business Mentorship Series 2.0 podcast. My name is Holly Eskridge. I'm an assistant director of our Economic Development Department, and I lead our business innovation team, which largely focuses on supporting our entrepreneurs and small businesses within the Charlotte community. Joining me today is Laura Smith, Executive Vice President for Foundation for the Carolinas. Together, we would like to talk to you about a very exciting program that we together built in partnership called Access to Capital. Access to Capital was several different grant programs that deployed around $45 million to our small businesses. And this all came about in May 2020. Our city leadership, our community, everyone understood how much our small businesses were suffering. The city realized that there was an overwhelming need to do something to support our small businesses. So they supported the Open for Business program, which actually put $50 million worth of capital into the small business community. Of that, the $45 million Access to Capital program that I discussed was the largest initiative. And so today, Laura and I are going to dive into everything Access to Capital, talk about how it was created, the significant components of it that I think made this a national model, and then also some challenges we felt, and then in the end, what the results were and the amazing impact it made to our small businesses. So thanks so much for being here, Laura. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for having me.
I would love to hear, we've worked together so much, but I have never actually asked this question. What is it, when you got that call from the city of Charlotte asking you all to participate in this program, what really hit the foundation that this was something that you all needed to do?
Well, the foundation has had a long history of partnership with the city of Charlotte as well as serving the community. And we knew how bad our community was hurting, and particularly the small businesses that we all love, the dry cleaners that we go and see, the restaurants that we had loved going to that were now closed. And we really felt like we had a core strength, which was grant making, that we could bring to the table. We normally do that grant making for nonprofits, but we thought we could take those same skills and help the city in terms of the grant making for profit and companies in town.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, it was an amazing partnership, and I know shortly after you all had that call and the commitment was made, we started hitting the ground running and really developed the initial program, the Small Business Recovery Program, that ended up being about a little over $30 million for small businesses in Charlotte.
Absolutely.
We hit the ground running. I think we designed it in about 2 weeks.
Yes, it was fast and furious, and luckily the city had been doing and working with their small business task force, had been doing a lot of work about conceptually what they hope to accomplish. And so, they really wanted to make this as easy as possible. They also really wanted initially to kind of put your thumb on the scale and say businesses that had not had access to PPP funding, to prioritize those. So a lot of the structural thinking had been done as we came in to partner. So we really had a great base of information to start building that grant program from.
Yeah, and I know that's exactly right, that Small Business Recovery Task Force. For those of you out there that don't know what that is, Mayor Lyles appointed that right after COVID-19 sort of hit and the shutdown started happening. And really it was a mixture of our elected officials, city council, and then members of the small business and then larger business community that really drove, I would say, the entire Open for Business strategy of the $50 million, but in particular, they had a major focus on these grant programs. I know one thing that we really wanted to focus on from the very beginning, at their direction, ours as well, is really breaking down some of these barriers to accessibility for these funds for people who were from our minority-owned small business community and also female-owned. Some of the PPP data on the initial round wasn't as diverse as we had hoped to see. And so talk to me a little bit about, the foundation's priority and how they really work to ensure that. when this application was not just even under development, but also as this application, this opportunity was really launched into the community itself?
Yeah, we really worked very hard in this area and really tried to think about what were the barriers that companies may have faced as they went to receive PP funding and maybe hadn't had that access, and how could we put in measures that would help give as many businesses access as possible. So there were a number of different strategies that were deployed. One of those, kind of right off the bat, is we really felt like we needed to make sure that businesses that may not have fax machines or computers, we needed to have places where they could go and actually have support filling out that application. So one of the real, I think, unique pieces of this program, as we partnered with our local YMCA, they had members of their workforce that were currently furloughed at that time. So they had a workforce that was available, and they had all these great locations across the city that are really scattered throughout the city of Charlotte. And so we partnered with them very early on, and they agreed to really be those sites that would be throughout the community, that if we bumped into individuals that either through a language barrier or through just could not understand an application, they had a place right from the start that they could go and get that support to help put that application in. So access to individuals for support was a key piece of this. We also made sure that the application, we had the full application in both Spanish and English, and then we had it translated into 5 other languages as well. So we wanted to make sure that we had that kind of support for those who may have had barriers in the past. We also just kind of on the ground, we would make decisions on how, if we felt like we were missing a piece of the community, if we saw grants were not coming in from an area of community, we did canvassing, and we would send people in and try to hit those corridors maybe where we hadn't seen grant applications, and be on the street and try to get information to those businesses, encouraging them to apply to the program.
It was absolutely incredible. I would say that I definitely want to discuss the actual outreach component, the advertising component, because let me tell you, it was like every day.
Yeah.
Multiple people, I heard it here, I heard it on the radio, I saw the billboard. So can you talk a little bit about the work that you did there with Pride?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to say it was actually a 3-way partnership on the communication side of things. Obviously, the foundation's own internal communications team, the city's communications team, and then we partnered with Pride Communications. And it was those 3 teams that really came together to, strategically think about this and talk about, how do we get, messages out into all streams. So you'd see it on billboards. You'd see it in all the major publications in town. We were on podcast. I know that Holly, yourself, you met with probably 50 or more associations, meeting with them and talking to their constituents about the opportunity. We were on Instagram. We were on Twitter. We did social media of all extents. We did interviews. Any place that we could think of, radio, we tried to be there. And luckily, we found really willing communication partners that often we would spend a little bit money, but they would actually give us more for our dollar, so that we had the chance to really try to reach out as much as we possibly could to try to hit as many businesses as we could.
That's awesome. It was absolutely incredible. And you're right, it was an amazing partnership between all 3 entities. So, okay, so let's just kind of get into it. So, we, for 2 weeks, build all the infrastructure, designed the program. It was wild. We did get our first awards out before June 1st, which was the Small Business Recovery Task Force. That was their request. So just thinking about this and knowing that this is, for this program specifically, we're talking about the Small Business Recovery program.
Yeah.
That was a little over $30 million, and we'll get into the other ones in a minute. But, that was our first one that we launched. Yeah. And so I would love to hear from those 2,500 businesses, small businesses. I will tell you, I get calls from across the country of people asking, how did it happen? How did you go about doing this? How are you successful? And so I would love to hear from you. Really, I mean, from the foundation side, you ran this. You were the administering partner.
Yeah.
The program managers. So what would you say were the greatest sort of successes that you would recommend? Like, this was absolutely worked. Any challenges, things that, lessons learned, those type of things. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start with the challenges, because you design a grant program and you think you've got it just right, that there can't be there are no trips, no places where people get mixed up. And I think very quickly we realized that, that was not the case, and that we had to go back into our application. We had to work on clarifying language to make it as clear as possible, and then had to have more support for applicants as well. So, I'd say one of our challenges was really dissecting the grant process and figuring out how to get as many businesses as we possibly could through the application process. Those things that I think that made us really truly successful is that we had a strong call center, so people, had that support. We also had a strong partnership with the city. I mean, Holly and I were on the phone every day together, if not multiple times. And so although the Foundation for the Carolinas was doing the actual grant making and interfacing with the business community, the city was really behind the scenes doing all the cutting of the checks. And so the other thing that I think the seamless nature of the relationship between the foundation and the city of the Charlotte really made the difference. I think that if we had been siloed and we had not had that kind of communication, we would never have been able to pull off these programs.
That is exactly right. We talk about it. You wouldn't even have known that we worked for two different organizations. It was a seamless process. And I do thank you for giving a shout out to the city team. It was truly remarkable. I learned so much to really get a check into a small business owner's hands. I was astounded at how many people needed to touch that one check to get that processed, and just the commitment of truly the city team, the foundation team working together. So it really, I don't know that we could have done this had that not happened. So I think that's a really, really good point. So let's talk about specifically on this program and then the demographics. So again, we've got 2,500 businesses. We've probably got 5,000-6,000 actually in applications that came in.
Yeah.
I feel like we knocked it out of the park from just really addressing what the Small Business Recovery Task Force asked us to do, which is ensuring that the awards were demographically diverse. And then also, I feel like there was a really good split among the council districts, too. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. We, again, with the communications campaign that we ran, we worked really hard to make sure that we were getting that message out to all districts. We actually reached out to the district representatives in each of those city council districts to say, where have we missed? Where should we be going? Who should we be talking to? So that as we knew we had those on the ground campaigns, we were actually making sure that we were targeting within those districts. We partnered with the city and said, where are your priority corridors, and are we hitting those? So we worked very hard to make sure that we were getting in and making sure that the information was in those communities. And it really, Holly can speak to this as well. You would hear these stories of these businesses, so it really became about individual stories of businesses that you were rooting for and trying to help, because you really wanted to see them sustain themselves through this. So it became globally about a lot of companies, but what really hit home were the individual stories about the businesses that we were starting to impact and really made a difference for.
I know that was so emotional, like some of the letters that we would get, the thank you notes, the phone calls. It was just truly, we all knew everything we were doing was for the right reason. And I will say, for that program alone, I've got the statistics here. Just from a race ethnicity standpoint, this program, 42% of those awarded were identified as Black or African American, 10% identified as Asian, 9% Latino or Hispanic, and then we have 3% in the other category. But, that literally leads us to really one of the most, I think, diverse programs as far as really truly making sure that this was open to minority-owned businesses. And I believe, if I remember correctly, female-owned businesses were about 42% of the awards.
Yeah.
So I really feel like this program did an absolutely amazing job and met really the goals and the directive we were given from the Small Business Recovery Task Force.
Yeah, and I think another interesting piece, Holly, that you'll recall as well is, we were giving two sizes of grants. For businesses that have 5 or less employees, we gave $10,000, or if you had 5 to 25 employees, you could get grants of $25,000. And the mass majority of these grants were to businesses with 5 employees or less and receiving $10,000. So you really were talking about some of the smallest businesses that are here in town that were clearly struggling the most and were most likely not to have gotten a PPP loan because they probably didn't have an accountant or a banker or a lawyer or someone that could help them step through that process. So I think it's really exciting that where these dollars ended up going, yes, the diversity in the minority community, women-owned business, but also the very smallest of our businesses in Charlotte as well.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
I mean, many of them would say, I never have been eligible for anything.
Yeah.
And here the city of Charlotte is really helping me,
Yeah.
help my company survive
Yeah.
and keeping people employed. And I think
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, when we surveyed this program, it wasn't about 600 jobs.
Yeah, 616, I believe, jobs that ended up being added as a result of these grants. So we knew we were hopefully going to help people sustain, but we didn't really realize that we'd actually help add some jobs to the community.
Absolutely incredible.
Holly, tell me about, one of the things that, obviously cities across the country were receiving these dollars, these CARES Act dollars from the federal government. How did the city make the decision that it really wanted to invest a very significant piece of the dollars that you received into the small business? And not only were you going to invest it in small businesses, you were going to give it in grants, money directly into their pockets that could help sustain them. How did you all make that decision?
Sure. It was apparent. It didn't take long. I mean, you have the shutdown that happened in March, almost a year ago. You could see, honestly, I remember looking at Seattle, for example, just to kind of, because everything was happening there first.
Yeah.
I just picked Seattle. Not sure why, but that's the city that I was watching, and I thought this is getting ready to be a huge trauma to our small business community here in Charlotte. And so I would say in our department, we started putting together kind of an initial sort of draft plan of what we would do if we receive any kind of funding. And then I would say our leadership, our elected officials, our Mayor Lyles, City Council, they all really said we have got to do something to help our small businesses. The City of Charlotte's always been very supportive of our small businesses, especially looking at how do we reduce the barriers to achieving success that some of our minority and small business owners face. And so this was, an extension of that. And then when we were able to get the CARES Act money, it really took what could have been, it would have been an impact, what we had, but it was able to magnify it times, 10 as far as impact. And we were able to do things that we've never been able to do. And I would say that, the city's never given grants directly to small businesses before, but if there was ever a time that it was necessary, loans just weren't an option.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not something that any small business owner was able to really feel good that we talked to, about receiving. So we said, let's do grants. And then the task force, knowing that we had that mix of, 4 council members and then different sectors of the business community, having them stand behind us and say, no, you are absolutely right, and giving us that direction.
Yeah.
That really got us to where we are.
Yeah.
And, it's something that I think all of us are incredibly proud about throughout the entire city, and I think community and the foundation, and it's pretty good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit. We had 3 other programs as well. They were smaller, but very impactful. I know that we did one of those internally, music venues, which I'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
But how about telling everyone a little bit about the food service recovery program and then the hotel support program?
Well, I think the city also realized we launched the Access to Capital Grants Program for small businesses, and it really was trying to reach across all industries. But I think everyone watching this happen across the country knew that the hospitality industry in particular was hit really hard. And so, as Holly mentioned, they worked on music venues internally, and the Foundation for the Carolinas helped take on a food service grants program as well as a hotel motel program. The food service one, we really focused not only on restaurants, but food trucks and caterers. And so we really tried to look holistically at that food service, industry. I believe we ended up funding about 348 restaurants alone out of that program. And we did that on a first-come, first-served basis to try to get those dollars out as quickly as possible. There had been many restaurants that had already been funded through food and beverage, but we had 348 that ended up being funded out of that program. So it was really exciting to see, again, the city responding to a particular industry that needed some extra help and putting the thumb on the scale to say, we want to try to get some extra dollars, into that. So we launched food and service, and then quickly on the heels of that, the city gave us an opportunity to help our hotel, motels, and bed and breakfast in this community. So we had the chance to give funding to that industry as well, and it was really exciting because we had a bed and breakfast that had, literally 2 rooms that we were able to serve, and then I believe the Westin Hotel was the largest one with over 700 firms. So even within the hotel motel industry, when you think of that, you think of larger. We also had a bed and breakfast with 2 rooms, so it really did run the gamut in terms of those we could support through that program.
I know on that one, it was highly relational from Sarah on your team.
Yeah.
Like she now,
Yeah.
I think.
It is.
Yes.
We, at this point, we're now running our 3rd grants program, and you're looking around for bodies. Okay, like who on your team is going to run this? And so it became really clear that was going to be a fairly tight grant program. And so actually, Sarah, who works directly for me, myself, and 2 of our finance people, we said, we can make this one happen. And so that, the food beverage program could continue, small business could continue. We weren't going to take people out of that. And we really kind of grabbed this one. And it was one of those things. I think she feels like she knows every hotel owner in Charlotte now because of conversations she had with them as they were working through their applications and questions that they had. So it really was a, get your hands dirty and get in the mix, and let's get this done on behalf of those organizations and those businesses. And I know that was kind of the experience on the music venue. So give me a little sense of what happened there.
Sure. Yeah, that's one that we definitely ran in-house, and it was a great experience. So, our locally run, operated music venues, really I would say entertainment venues, we actually expanded it out, have been hit so incredibly hard. I mean, it was a tremendous need and an industry that we really can't afford to lose in Charlotte. It's just a very unique part of our arts and culture community that we needed to protect. And so really looking at outside of what, a direct grant for operational sort of stability, which they were eligible for.
Yeah.
Under the programs you just talked about, but really an intensive look at what we could do to stabilize them. And in talking with a group it's a music venue kind of ownership group called SIVA here in town, really understanding, what are the needs, what are the deficits, what's the impact that has been realized by your venues. We came up with a 9-month grant rent subsidy. So we just required the venue, you had to sell live tickets. So you had to have an evidence of live ticket sales. So a group like the Comedy Zone, for example, that's not like a music venue, was also eligible to receive this grant. And I would say from this program, the impact on that alone, it's the same thing. This was very, very hands-on. We developed very strong relationships. There were only 11 in the city that, applied for this program. And we feel really, really good about what this has been able to do. And I actually saw when the governor relaxed some of the restrictions last Friday. I actually heard from a couple of those business owners that really were saying like how this grant money helped them get to the point where they can actually now start to open up slowly. So very, very excited about it.
Absolutely. That's great.
And then, I want to just briefly talk about 2 other programs. I know these weren't our grant programs, but 2 other programs that I know were incredibly impactful that the City of Charlotte did as part of that $50 million for the full small business support initiative, Open for Business initiative. One was we actually have partners here in the community. So they could be nonprofit, government, or academic partners. And one thing that Charlotte has that I think is so unique is that the partners who work with our small businesses, they are very connected. We have, again, not to talk about national models, but we are one in that sense, because people are like, how do you get all of you all talking? They may compete for customers. There may be a, duplication of efforts, but it doesn't matter. We actually all work together in a very, very collaborative way. So what we did is we said, let's just give $2 million. They could apply up to $250,000 and to do something to either pivot within their organization to meet businesses in this very unique time with the needs they have, or to expand something they were already doing. Super excited about that. That was actually 11 organizations we funded, some really creative programs that served over 15,000 businesses. So the impact on that program was huge, and those businesses were largely minority and female-owned small businesses. And then the other program was our Resilient Re-Up program. We paid for 60 companies to go through business continuity training. They developed a plan. They had coaching to really say, whether it's COVID-19, like shut down like this again, we would never want that, but if that, or if it's a major weather event, some kind of a construction project, a capital project in front of your business, how are you prepared to really weather those changes and those disruptions? So we're very, very excited about it. Again, this is to us and really being viewed on a national level, $50 million injected into our small business ecosystem in a matter of 7 months is pretty incredible.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that I think I'm the most impressed with is your department really took a holistic approach to this. It said it's not going to be one size fits all. It looked at grants programs. It looked at multiple grants programs. I know you also funded an innovation grants program that you worked with Charlotte Center City Partners on. You had business continuity grant support. You mentioned the associations that you worked at. You really said, how do we take these dollars? How do we infuse it into the community? Some businesses we want to go great. We want to have direct grants to them. Some we can help them with strategic planning. Others we can help them innovate to this new level. And then also, how do we support those associations in our town that we know are critical to undergirding our businesses long term and making sure they're stable and are providing extra services? So I think that's one of the things that is the most exciting, is that you really took that $50 million and said, how can we amplify that in the best possible ways for our business community?
Well, thanks. So you guys were a very large part of that, and we really do. I don't even know how we would have gotten $45 million of that money deployed into the small business ecosystem as quickly as we did, as effectively as we did, as truly equitably as we did. So I think it's pretty awesome. Is there anything, before we close out, that you would like to add, or?
Just want to say a huge thank you. Holly was an incredible partner during this process. We are so grateful to the mayor and to the city council for trusting the foundation to be this partner that could come to the table. We hope our community never has to go through this again, but we're just incredibly honored to be able to play a role as our community moved through the pandemic.
You guys were absolutely incredible, and you were an amazing partner as well, are an amazing partner to me in that work, and I'm so grateful that we had that time together. In fact, I remember when when everything we started closing everything out, I felt like a little off. I was like, wait a minute.
Our 2 or 3 phone calls a day.
Right,
I was like, how do we
what's
feel
happening?
This?
So
Absolutely.
It took me a few days. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. The City of Charlotte will continue to be a huge advocate for supporting our small business community, whether it is through direct programs to our small businesses, whether it's telling the stories of your success, whatever way we can help you, we are ready to do so. And thank you so much.